I'd always wanted a 00 gauge railway, but never seemed to have the space inside the house. Fortunately, I managed to find some space in the garden and was able to build one recently outside. Join me in this video as I show you how I built my 00 gauge garden railway in only a week. Hi, I'm Matt and you're watching Model Minutes. For this video, I'm going to break my build down into a few different stages: planning the layout, constructing the track bed, and laying the track. So let's start at the beginning with my plan. Well, this is the space I had available in my garden. You can see that it is a L-shaped flower bed, and it is my intention to have some sort of figure 8 layout so that I can have continuously running trains. The problem is I have a garden that's on a bit of a slope. It's not much of a gradient, but it might present some problems later. I had some 00 gauge track from Hornby and Pico, which had been in storage for many years. This consisted of some second and third radius curves and a number of straight lengths too. I did have some steel track, but I won't be using that outside, and I'll show you why later. All the track I'm going to use will be nickel silver. Unfortunately, I don't actually have enough to get started straight away, so ended up ordering some more Bachmann track, as it was slightly cheaper. I will use set track for the curves and flexible track for the straight areas. So here is a bit of a plan that I had come up with. It's not accurate, nor does it take any real measurements into account, but it's what I'm going to work with. Most of my planning is in my head, and I will pretty much make things up as I go along. Material-wise, I was fortunate that I got a number of scrap pallets for free and also some garden wood paint that was otherwise going to be thrown away, so this will certainly help keep costs down. So with the materials ready to go and a bit of a plan in my head, it was time to make a start. The straight track bed lengths were easy enough to do. I effectively cut 6-inch support blocks, then made a bridge using an entire plank of wood from the pallet as the base. They would all be glued with PVA and either screwed or nailed together depending on what I had available at that moment. I did start by screwing everything together, but it was time consuming. So instead I bought some nails and used them to speed things up. I saved the old nails from the pallets and would use them as spikes on the bottom of the supports to help keep the track bed in place when I pushed them into the ground. The curved areas of the layout would be a little more difficult. I started off with this, my first attempt at a curve. I cut 3-inch lengths of wood and then screwed and glued them to a rear support. Although it looks quite good in my opinion, it would mean a lot of cutting and screwing on my part, and I found that it was just simply far too frustrating. I then moved on to a slightly better design, using the same principle but with less cuts. This gets twice the amount of track bed complete for half the amount of effort. I continued this process, adding more curves and checking that the track would fit as I went, effectively building to the curve of the set track, adding extra pieces here and there as needed. The wood would all be given a coat or two of the green wood treatment, which helps make it look a bit neater and also helps increase the life of the layout, especially as it will be outside in all the elements. After about 3 or 4 days, I had made good progress and was now at the bridge of the figure 8. Although constructed in the same way as the previous parts, I found that I had to raise and lower the track by digging out the soil. This was a bit of a trial and error process, and may well have to be watched over time as the soil settles and compacts. I would also have to check the level of the layout to try and minimise gradients by digging out soil in a few other places too. After a number of days of work, I finally had all the curves and straight areas built, glued, pinned and painted. This meant that it was time to start track laying. I started with the outer loop first, as I was still waiting on the Bachmann track to arrive in the post. The track was laid from the curves first, and I simply used Hornby trap pins to do this. I moved on to the straight areas using the same process. The pin was pushed into place and gently hammered in. Then I used a nail punch to drive it completely home. I don't use every single hole in every single bit of track, as there were some slight differences in the level of the wood, so that would mean some very bumpy areas of track and could lead to derailment. Opting to do it this way would result in a smoother transition in those areas. I found I only needed to cut a few lengths of track to make the complete circuit, and I measured the length of rail needed, then used some special track cutters to do this. On the flexible track, I snipped off the first couple of chairs on each end to help the rail joiner slide into place. Rail joiners, or fish plates as they are known, were then pushed onto the ends of the rails. I used both Hornby and Bachmann ones, but found the Bachmann ones had a slightly looser fit on the Bachmann track. The Hornby fish plates were a little too tight and were a real pain to use. At this point, my delivery of track has arrived and I can complete the inner circuit too. The hardest part about laying the track was not losing the pins in the soil. With the track now all in position and pinned down, it's time to get some trains running. I'm using a Hornby power track which came as part of a train set, and also this power clip. I plugged in one of the older and newer Hornby controllers, as that's what I had available in my model railway stash. And with that done, I had, for the most part, completed my 00 gauge garden railway in no more than a week. So what have I learnt about this layout from running it so far? Well, firstly, as I alluded to earlier, steel track would be no good. I left this length of steel track outside for the same amount of time that the nickel-silver track had been, and you can see that in only a week it started to rust. I imagine that parts of my layout will need repairing or replacing over time, but if I'd used steel track, then it would have to happen quite often. Secondly, the slight gradient of my garden means that the trains are pretty much going to be running up or downhill all the time. The curve at the far end, closest to the bridge, is a little steep as a result, but it's not impossible for most locos to go up. It does mean, though, that long trains probably won't be a real possibility on this for now, without some serious alteration to the earthworks. Thirdly, there are a few places where anything long, like my 158 class DMU, could hit other coaches on the curves. This is a mistake on my part for not properly checking as I built it, but smaller coaches run around the curves with no issues. Finally, there are a few little areas here and there that certain locos or items of rolling stock don't really like, and either get stuck due to the gradient or might derail. I could investigate these areas in time and see about fixing them. At the moment, I'm quite content to run the trains as they are, but I do have some plans for the future. I'm thinking of doing something with the bridge area, perhaps to try and make it look like a proper railway bridge with some elements of scenery. I'll be planting more flowers and things like that in an attempt to make it look more attractive, and could add some large rocks and other scenic items over time too. The garden is fortunate in some respects, as it is mostly shady and doesn't get direct sunlight for large portions of the day, which I'm hoping will help prevent the metal in the tracks from expanding too much and as a result needing repairs. It does mean, though, that any plants would need to be suited for such an environment. As regards the power supply, I'll probably look at hooking up some better controllers, as I find these cheap Hornby ones to not be that good. I mean, they work for what I want them to do, but I'm just not completely happy with them. Also, I'll look at soldering some permanent wires to the track, as I simply can't put my full confidence in this power track and clip. I may also solder some wires around each track joint just in case the fish plates start to fail electronically due to the elements or whatever. But for now, it seems to all be working okay. Is it perfect? No, but it is a lot of fun. So what did this cost? As I said earlier, wood and paint was free, and I had about half the track and most of the tools already. The extra track cutter, pins, fish plates, nails and a few small tools that I bought ended up resulting in a cost of around £100. I think I was quite fortunate in this, as it's quite a low price for what I've got, and realistically if I'd bought everything new to start the project, the price could well have been 3 or 4 times greater. For now though, I've got an excuse to get outside in the garden and to finally play with all those 00 gauge trains that I had been collecting. What do you think of my garden railway? I'd be interested in hearing any suggestions for things I could now include or improve. Make sure you pop them in the comments. As always, honourable mention to my patrons over on Patreon. It's support from people like this who make my projects possible. A massive thank you to you guys. To find out more about pledging and the perks it gets you, including early access to videos amongst other things, take a look at the links in the description. Don't forget that you can connect with me on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and my own Discord server. If you made it this far, please click that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss any future installments I might make on this 00 gauge garden layout. All that's left to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again either on the workbench or in the garden next time.